Servnet. Your data, our business.
I think it's about time we got started. So my name's Rick Dudson and I'm the VP of Sales for Servnet and EMEA. And I'm joined today by my colleague Dragos Kirian. He's our VP of Marketing. First, and I guess most important, we'd like to thank you for taking the time and trouble to join us for our webinar, which today we are presenting what are hyperconverged infrastructures and why they matter. So during the webinar, we're going to look to explain how hyperconverged infrastructures evolved, how they work, how they solve the challenges presented by today's traditional IT solutions. And we're also going to look to show you how you can grow your business rather than your IT spending by adopting hyperconverged technology, which I think is possibly something that's also very, very interesting to everybody. Just a quick point before we start everything off. If I suggest that anybody has any questions, we're very, very happy to answer them, but if we can keep them until the end of the presentation, and then we'll do them all together. Right, we're going to start by looking at hyperconverged infrastructures and why they matter from three specific and what we feel are very relevant points of view. So firstly, we can say that it's very clear that today's IT environment is changing at an ever-increasing pace. New ideas, new technologies continually being born, and we read about it every day. It almost seems like an overnight thing. You wake up in the morning and there's something new and exciting from the IT world. Now, also, where some of them have become or do become adopted and very mainstream, many others, as we'll all know from being in this industry, tend to disappear, various reasons. They're often unable to meet the challenges and needs of the industry. And this industry itself that we're all in, we can almost, if we look back on history, see it that it's effectively powering a new industrial revolution. So one of the questions we really need to ask, and I guess we want to try and answer here is hyperconvergence a technology which fulfills the expectations both from an economical and commercial point of view, as well as from an innovation and a technical improvement standpoint? We'll see. Secondly, we see that IT infrastructures are steadily becoming a commodity that no company can do without. So today's webinar, we will also take a look at what organizations themselves are demanding from the people who run their IT departments for them, i.e. what is being asked of the IT managers, the IT directors and so forth by the people that actually employ them to run their infrastructure. And lastly, we'll look at what a traditional hyperconverged solution actually looks like, and very importantly for this webinar, how Servnet is innovating across this sector, whereby we're converging even more technologies inside our own unique platform. Now this results in our being able to provide SMBs and robos with what we believe is the most powerful and feature-rich all-in-one hyperconverged infrastructure on the market today. Indeed, we actually have our own name for this, which Dragos will share with you later during the webinar. So I'll now hand over to Dragos, who will commence by explaining about some strategic assumptions that we made that led us to take the direction that we have both as a company and with the product portfolio. So if I could ask you to take over, Dragos.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Rick, thank you for your sharp introduction. My name is Dragos Kirian, and I'm the VP of Marketing for Servnet. So before we move into why hyperconverged infrastructures are the next leap in enterprise IT, let's take a look at the global IT market in order to better understand the technological trends which are shaping today's enterprise IT market. I would like to share with you some strategic assumptions that shaped our direction as a company, because we believe there are a series of trends affecting the world of IT infrastructure today that will completely change this landscape in the near future. Now, first of all, Gartner states that hyperconverged systems market will grow about 80% and take up to a quarter of the market by 2019. At the same time, traditional enterprise storage is shrinking by about 16%. On the other hand, there is an interesting trend emerging that states that most of the systems will become self-protecting, which will remove the need for backup applications. And this is growing. This is growing from less than 2% today. And I'm proud to say that Servnet right now is part of that 2% of self-protecting infrastructures. And in the next few minutes, we will see how we have achieved this and why this is very important for SMBs and remote or branch offices. We believe that this growth of self-protecting systems is happening because in the last 7 to 8 years, innovation in the world of backup and disaster recovery systems has been missing. There was only slight incremental improvement, not a radical change. And it is time for a change, for a better, faster, and more agile approach. But why is it time for a change? Why is innovation necessary now? It's because IT managers are constantly facing new challenges brought about by new technologies, as Rick mentioned, or let's face it, by an increasingly competitive national and world economy. So let's take a look at the challenges faced by today's IT managers. First off, budgets. Budgets are always decreasing. As an IT manager, your business always asks you to do more with less, right? You need to come up with a more agile, simpler, more effective, and let's face it, less expensive solution each time. The budget, as I said, always shrinking. So with all these constraints, you have to take less risks because you can't make your infrastructure become less dependable. The world of traditional IT infrastructures is currently difficult, complex. It's a mix of servers, data storage platforms, networking switches, and backup infrastructures. Right now, all of these different pieces of, let's call it the IT puzzle, live in separate, expensive, and more often than not, hard to manage silos. And this is traditional infrastructure at its worst, because with expanding business requirements and the shrinking budgets we mentioned, it creates a set of challenges for IT managers, which are all too familiar for everyone. And here we're talking about complexity, costs, recovery times, and data protection. So let's look at a traditional IT infrastructure today to see why these challenges have appeared and why it is important that they are solved in the near future. As you can see on the left side, we have a traditional virtualized infrastructure that most companies use today, ever since they made the transition to virtualization. On the right side, we have a traditional disaster recovery infrastructure, which protects the primary one in a certain way. So what are the problems with this type of solution? First of all, the primary infrastructure is too expensive to buy, as it needs a lot of components. You have the separate servers, switches, and the SAN, which hosts all the data for the virtualized applications. And this is difficult to protect, and indeed it is very complex to manage because you physically have to go inside every piece of the infrastructure in order to manage it. Meanwhile, the backup infrastructure, although it offers a certain level of protection, suffers from unreliable recovery time objectives, so RTO, in case of disasters, because all the data needs to be copied from proprietary backup formats to production servers. You need additional storage provisioning, and it's very inefficient from a storage usage perspective, because basically you have to double your entire data infrastructure inside the disaster recovery one in order to be able to carry out backups from the primary infrastructure. And we believe that innovation is at the intersection of these multiple domains of virtualized infrastructure and disaster recovery. So that's why we've looked at the bigger picture and try to change this status quo of traditional IT infrastructure. Looking at the concept of hyperconvergence, we see that it's basically a unification of traditional hypervisors and compute capacity alongside the networking switches and the application storage. But in the end, the difference in innovating this sort of infrastructure is in the software, because right now in the world, intelligence itself is in the software. So you converge the hypervisor and the computing capacity with the networking and the storage into a single platform that provides all these services. This is the primary concept behind hyperconverged infrastructures. Let's also take a look at how these infrastructures have evolved over time, because back in the 90s, when applications and IT services were becoming mainstream in many companies, the first infrastructures were based on physical servers, meaning that every server ran its own application and had a storage resource connected to it, what is called a direct attached storage. And companies usually had a number of these physical servers running one application with the connected storage. After virtualization became mainstream, the traditional infrastructure that we know today was born, in the sense that we have servers running hypervisors and the virtual application workload connected through a switch, meaning the storage network, to SANs, the traditional SAN, the storage area network that hosts all the data from the virtual applications. And finally, we come to today's innovation, hyperconverged infrastructures, which take all these concepts of traditional infrastructures and move them into a single, easy to manage platform that has all these resources, as the name suggests, converged inside it. Now, compared to traditional IT infrastructures, which are often over-provisioned, hyperconverged solutions leverage the full potential of modern computing and storage hardware, because you have to take into mind that traditional infrastructures were born in a few years ago when all these technological advancements had not yet appeared. So hyperconverged infrastructures unify these into a single platform, and they deliver a far more cost-effective full stack IT infrastructure, which also offers great application performance, space efficiency, and most important of all in the agile world today, fast deployment of resources. So simplified management, it's easy because you have everything inside a single interface that can be easily managed by an IT generalist. And isn't it often the case in small and medium companies throughout the world or in remote or branch offices that there is a single IT generalist that manages everything, including most of the IT infrastructure? Also, the costs and the efficiency, the costs are reduced and the efficiency is improved because the purchasing price is much lower, as you do not need to acquire every single piece of the infrastructure independently. They're also easy to deploy because they are pre-configured. You just need to connect them to the network and start using it. They're cost-effective to scale. Updates are seamless and very simple to do, and they have overall lower operating costs because there are not so many components connected and using power and cooling and manpower and management resources. At the same time, they are faster to deploy because, as I said, they are absolutely pre-configured, and also they are very easy to recover. You can recover any piece of the IT infrastructure, including business applications and data, without having to activate the whole disaster recovery side of the IT infrastructure. And most important of all, there is no data loss because data protection is much improved, and it usually hyperconverged infrastructures have a fast automated disaster recovery capability that leads to no risks for downtime or data loss. So is that enough for SMBs? Is that enough for remote or branch offices? Because there are currently a number of offerings of great products in the hyperconverged market. And we don't think so. Let's look at the hyperconverged market right now to see why we don't think so. In the lower side of the market, you have the software-only hyperconverged offerings. We are talking about the 15,000 euro mark. And these solutions can be deployed on various servers like Cisco, Lenovo, and many others. But we believe that there is an inconvenience when buying everything in pieces and not having support from a single vendor. And if you think about a situation where there is an issue with the IT infrastructure, but you cannot pinpoint if it is a software issue or a hardware issue, this will lead to many troubling calls and a difficult resolution between the hardware vendor and the software vendor. So for most companies, this might result in not having the complete out-of-the-box experience. In the upper side of the market, you have the global 200,000 enterprise players. And the problem with these solutions are that for the European market, for European SMBs, they are too expensive. They don't have any kind of built-in disaster recovery. If you acquire one of these solutions, you have to double it in order to achieve a disaster recovery capability. And it's overkill for most SMBs customers. Unless you're the New York Stock Exchange, you probably do not need to scale from 50 virtual machines to 1,500 in a couple of weeks. In between this 15,000, 35,000 range is Servnet. And we address the SMB market, which is a huge market. It's 99% of European companies, according to Eurostat. And right now, inside this market, there is no out-of-the-box complete hyperconverged product that can fit SMBs and the budget needs as well as the feature needs of SMBs and remote or branch offices. So we offer Servnet as the perfect replacement for traditional IT infrastructures that are the server plus SAN solutions. And we do this by taking hyperconvergence to the next level. The HyperSeries 3000 is our product that takes everything a hyperconverged infrastructure delivers and adds more to it, as Rick mentioned. So aside from having virtualized applications, virtual networking, and storage inside the same platform, we also converge built-in disaster recovery capabilities, native file sharing, which is important for SMBs who do create a lot of data, which is not necessarily application data, but also media, files, documents, and everything else. And at the same time, of course, we also converge a higher level of application performance. So this is the HyperSeries 3000. It is an all-in-one hyperconverged IT infrastructure with built-in disaster recovery. Built-in disaster recovery meaning that every single HyperSeries 3000 ships with two units. A primary unit, where all the application workload runs most of the time, and a separate disaster recovery unit, which is an integral part of the product that can be located on or off-site. It doesn't need to be located with the primary unit. And this allows you to share backups between the primary unit and the DR unit in order to be able to recover from any form of disaster recovery scenario. So basically, we took all the different pieces, all the different IT services that an SMB or remote office might need, and combined them into a single product, which is the HyperSeries 3000. And the primary appliance, as I said, replicates the entire virtual infrastructure to the DR unit, and the DR unit itself is also a hyperconverged appliance, which uses native Servnet backups and can instantly restore the entire IT infrastructure without additional storage provisioning. And all this takes just 15 minutes. Series 3000, because of the way it is engineered to converge so much more than other hyperconverged products on the market right now, it has a series of unique benefits. And first off, the HyperSeries 3000 offers up to 5 times more performance when compared to traditional infrastructures. This is possible thanks to the way we handle application data reads and writes. We use the tiered approach, which allows us to do 80 to 90% of the data reads and writes directly from the RAM level, from the RAM memory. And this is at nanosecond latency. This is absolutely the fastest way to read data, either if you're an application or if you're simply trying to access the files stored inside your hyperconverged infrastructure. At the same time, for data protection, the HyperSeries 3000 is capable of up to 1,440 completely automatic backups every day for every VM or file with just 0.1% storage capacity utilization. And what this allows you to do is create a local backup in under 1 second and to recover an entire virtual machine in under 1 minute. This means that your recovery point objective, so the amount of time you can go back to recover any sort of virtual machine or data, is 1 minute. And you can recover, as I previously mentioned, your entire IT infrastructure on the hyperconverged disaster recovery unit in only 15 minutes. So let's take a look at how you can recover VMs or files in case of a downtime incident or in case of another disaster. As I said, the primary unit is capable of 1,440 backups for every file and VM. And there are the files and the VMs that are running on your primary infrastructure. At the same time, backups are automatically replicated to the disaster recovery unit every single minute. So let's look at a scenario where some of your files or VM get either deleted through human error, infected with ransomware, which is a very common scenario nowadays, or there is some sort of natural disaster which affects your primary unit. If the primary unit is not completely lost due to the natural disaster, you can recover instantly any VM or file directly from the local backups created on the primary unit. And if something happens to the data on the primary unit, you can recover it directly from the DR unit in as little as 15 minutes. This also allows you to set different retention policies. You might decide that you wish to have backups only of data in the last week on your primary unit, while keeping a far longer retention policy on the DR unit, let's say the last 6 months. You can recover this data directly from the DR unit, thereby solving any sort of issue you might have on the primary unit and allow you to get back to business. That was the HyperSeries 3000. It's been powering companies everywhere. If we have a look, I've attempted here to split them into different sectors. We can look at the manufacturing and engineering companies. We have a lot of customers in this market. LG, which everyone knows. Silca, who is one of the largest key manufacturers on the planet. And a lot of well-known mechanical engineering companies throughout Europe. I would like to particularly point out our customers in the education and research field. We have the University of Milan, which is one of the largest in Europe, and also the University of Bologna, which is the place that the current higher education system that we use in Europe was invented in the first place. Also the American School of Dubai, Dowling College in New York, and many more. We've also had a lot of customers benefiting from our hyperconverged solutions in the public sector. Province of Rome, which manages all the Rome metropolitan area, the Italian Air Force, Fairfax County in Virginia, and many others. Now, for companies who are service providers in their own end, the Hyper series has proven to be a very dependable and very cost-effective solution that allows them to easily ship their services to their customers. And just to mention a few, SaaS Plaza is one of the largest Microsoft Dynamics in the cloud providers in the world. WaveTech and many other small telecommunication companies offering disaster recovery as a service. We also have customers in retail, financing, logistics, world-renowned companies like Calcedonia, who design women's lingerie. Fnac was one of the largest retailers in France, and many others.
I'll just recap on that in case other people couldn't hear that. So thanks very much, Dragos, for taking us through all of that. Hopefully the content of the webinar from Dragos mirrored the introduction that I did as to what we were going to try and present to you and explain in terms of the world that Servnet lives in and produces products for, and the objectives that we set out when we designed the product, and how we believe that we've fulfilled those, and in turn have fulfilled and provide a solution which is ideal for SMBs, remote branch offices, SMBs as well. And as you can see, we're doing that already on a global, let alone European basis. We hope that you found it interesting, useful and informative, that it's sort of hopefully given you a much greater understanding of what hyperconvergence is, what the benefits of hyperconvergence are, why companies would look and have looked and are, rapidly, as Dragos showed you with that data earlier in the presentation, moving towards a hyperconverged infrastructure. And if it's something that you feel is applicable and relevant to your business, be it today, be it tomorrow, or as we move on, then please feel very, very welcome, as I say, to send the questions to us. And between us, we'll all be very, very happy to give you an answer and, hopefully some solutions that will meet your needs. So on that note, I'll bring everything to a close. Thank you once again, everybody, for attending, and we'll look out to hear from everybody in the future.
Servnet, your data, our business.